What's going on, everybody? I'm your boy Retro Bliss, and you are on Retro Bliss Rewind, and we have a very exciting show tonight. And so, without further delay, I'm just going to bring the panel on and our special guest. First of all, Mike from Mike's Gaming Gala, who is a regular panelist, and Brian from BD RetroMods, and our special guest, Michael Thomasson, the Michael Thomasson.
The Michael Thomasson.
A Michael Thomasson.
So should I introduce him?
Yeah, that's what you want to do. So let's do it.
For those of you who are not familiar with Mr. Thomasson here, Mr. Thomasson is the proprietor of Good Deal Games and Homebrew Heavens. He publishes some and distributes others. Currently available on his website. There are hundreds of sites on many systems, including every Atari system, ColecoVision, Intellivision, Odyssey 2, Nintendo systems, Sega systems. You want it, he's probably got it. He is the former Guinness World Record holder for the largest video game collection in the world. He is a video game historian and college professor. He is the author of the currently available Downright Bizarre Games, and he's a columnist for gaming magazines. He has been a columnist for multiple gaming magazines over the year, including currently Old School Gamer magazine. And he has worked with legends of the industry such as Ralph Baer, the father of home video games, Ed Averitt, Mr. Odyssey 2, Keith Robinson, Mr. Intellivision. That is a small list, and we're going to talk about a bunch more, including another book that's coming out and a game that he is just publishing now, as well as much more about his story throughout the podcast. But that is your quick introduction.
I'm very excited to have Michael on the show.
I'm very excited to be here.
I first met Michael a couple years ago at the Korg's Gaming Convention here in Ohio, and I actually, if I can, I'll just get my part out of the way real quick. I bought a game that I streamed on the channel today. Don't laugh at me, guys.
Streamed very poorly today.
I streamed very poorly. That's right. It was horrible. Kung Fu Combat, which he actually has on his site, which there's a link in the description to Good Deal Games and to his YouTube channel, by the way. But he signed it, and he's actually on the cover. He's on the cover doing this, whatever he was doing. I don't know what he was doing. But, you have the game cartridge, but then inside there was like this. I can't get it around my head. Actually, I can, but there was this inside and the game instructions and some cards and stuff. I thought this is really cool. And for what you can do for the 2600, I mean, I thought it was very well done considering what, the types of controls that are needed to make fighting moves, for a sprite for a game. You have a joystick and an action button. That's all you have. And so I thought it was very well done considering the limitations that you had to work with, but I did my best. I haven't practiced it a whole lot, but it's graphically it's amazing.
Well, one thing about that game, and again, I didn't program that one, Edward and his partner did, but that game does something they said the VCS couldn't do. It has animated backgrounds. So
yes, it does.
It's very visually impressive for sure.
And title screens and map screens and everything else.
And game over screen, which we saw a lot during Phil's gameplay earlier today.
Like every 30 seconds. No.
I just want to say that I wasn't being vain when I put myself on the cover. I actually put programmer Edward's face on the fighter on the cover, and he told me that he decided he wasn't cool enough for that and to remove him and to put me in his place. So I just want to put that out there. I've released over close to 200 games. It's the only cover I'm on, just to put it out there.
Fair enough.
So, Mike, tell either Michael, or Mike, somebody tell us about your accolades. I want to find out. I know that you actually, let's talk about your teaching. You teach video game history, don't you?
I do. I'm one of the 2 original premier video game professors. If you remember Bill Kunkel, he was one of the first 3 video game journalists that did electronic games back in the day. And him and I, we worked on our syllabi together. He was working out in Arizona on the West Coast. I was on the East Coast at Asbury College. And this was around 1993 or 94. And video game classes are common now, but back then it was a battle to get into the colleges. And of course, now they're mainstream. And I've been teaching ever since. When I left Kentucky, New York, I started working for Canisius College, which is now Canisius University. And then I also teach for Villa Maria, which has a dedicated video game program. And I teach the history of video game classes. I teach advanced animation for gaming, and I teach game design. And then recently, thanks to COVID, I got my history of video games class part 2, which I've been pining for years, and they kept turning me down. And in the college's defense, they say, well, we want, classes that are more applicable to what they'll be using in the real world when they get out of school. But, when I started teaching the history class in the 90s, I'd start with the abacus, and I'd get to about 1995 or so, and I'd run out of classes. But that's okay, because it was only 4 or 5 years since the modern age. Well, now it's a quarter century later, and that's a whole lot of history. So I've been asking for a second class, and they wouldn't give it to me. And then when COVID happened, all the teachers stopped teaching. They've retired early and left. And then they didn't have enough people to teach all the classes. And the school said, hey, we want you to teach this. And I didn't really want to teach it. And then I realized how desperate they were. I said, you know what? If you really want me to teach, you need to give me the class I want. And they said, are you pitching your History 2 class again? And I said, I am. And I got it. So now I rotate History 2 every 3rd semester. And we still can't get to the modern age, but we're a whole lot closer than we were.
Wow, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, so that maybe we talk about your kind of genesis of video gaming. Anybody who's a fan of Retro Bliss Gaming Channel knows Phil's origin story. He was 12 years old. He got himself a 2600, and he hates Pac-Man. We've talked before.
2600 Pac-Man. I love Pac-Man.
Yeah, 2600
Pac-Man. Let's make it perfectly clear.
Yes. He's got a lot of pent up aggression about Pac-Man.
I'm very bitter. Todd Fry better hope I don't see him.
I know some of these stories, but what's the genesis of a man who's basically dedicated his entire life to video games?
Well, I was bit by a radioactive spider, and no, just kidding. As a kid, my mom would take me shopping, and I remember just generic early mid 70s, early 70s arcade games. And, we didn't have money for a quarter, but I remember going up to them and moving the joystick and pressing the button. I thought I was playing because I was a stupid kid. We probably all can tell this story. But the first time I ever really video games blew my mind is, like all kids in the early 70s, we'd ride our bicycles where we had to go. And I had an older brother and sister. And of course, they'd take me on streets I wasn't allowed to cross. And I'd saved my money from here and there. And we were going to Dairy Queen to get a Mr. Misty, which was their popular drink of the time. And we walk in, and there's this hulking box in the corner, and all these people are gathered around it. There's an alien monster on the side. And, we were curious what it was, despite being hot and thirsty kids. Kool-Aid Man wasn't around. And we walked over to the big box, and, it turned out to be a Space Invaders. But, after a few seconds, I realized the person was interacting with the machine, right? And that was kind of the eureka moment that sparked the fire. Excuse me, got some water here. It kind of sparked the fire. And I asked for an Odyssey, and we didn't have the money. And I asked for a television, and we didn't have the money. And, asked for a ColecoVision, and Didn't get it, but I thought I was going to get it because on Christmas Eve, my grandparents gave me a box. I opened it up and it was Cosmic Avenger. And I was all excited. Oh, I'm going to get a ColecoVision the next day. And
yeah.
And I didn't, you know. And my mom's like, well, you know, we can return it to the store and sorry you didn't get one and you can get another toy. And I said, no, I'm going to own a ColecoVision someday. And I sat at night before going to bed, read the back of the box and looked at the cartridge every day for 4 months until my birthday in April. Still didn't get a ColecoVision. And then the following year, and I mean, I was playing my friends' Ataris at their houses and Odysseys, but you know, I wanted my own. And then the following year, and you know, I'm a Catholic boy, and at our house on Christmas, it's, you know, it's not the scene in the movies where you wake up in the morning and you run downstairs and you tear through your presents. You know, we spend the morning preparing breakfast, doing such thing as de-stringing celery. That was my mom's thing.
Oh, Lord.
And making this big meal. We'd go to mass. Guests would come over. We'd sit around the table for hours. And then after the guests were done, we'd do the dishes. And then it's, you know, 4:30 in the afternoon, we start opening gifts. And so we all appreciate them. We'd open one by one, right? So, and of course, the big gifts always held to the end. And we finally get to it a whole year later after owning my Cosmic Avenger cartridge. And the ColecoVision's there. I'm all excited. We go downstairs. My dad's trying to figure out how to hook it up to the TV because he's never encountered a TV box before. And we finally get it hooked up. Put the game cartridge, Donkey Kong cartridge in the machine, turn the power on. The logo comes on the screen. Push my skill level. I take about 5 steps, and a freak snowstorm in Kentucky knocks the power out. And couldn't play it. And my parents let me stay up past my bedtime a couple hours. Still no power. I played with my brother's train for a bit. And then I went to bed. My brother and sister were older than me. And I swear, as soon as my head hit the pillow, the power came back on. And they wouldn't let me downstairs. And they didn't sleep because I was listening to my older brother and sister play Donkey Kong and Cosmic Avenger. And I'm imagining the moves of the players on the screen in my mind's eye. And I'm obviously still traumatized by this event because I'm talking about it 45 years later.
So it kind of sounds to me like you had all this built up energy that just exploded later on in life. And that's probably why you ended up getting so much stuff later on, man.
Yeah. Well, I really started acquiring stuff in the early 90s. I was really into the Jaguar and that scene, and the Atari Lynx, and it was hard to find games for that stuff. So I started hitting pawn shops and resale stores, and retro games weren't in vogue then. I'd go there and the games were like $1, right? Turbo graphics, that kind of stuff. And so I started for $1, I'll buy about anything. Cause I mean, as a programmer too, it's like research, you know, and I was into animation and I like to play them too. So for $1, I'd buy anything. And I just started scooping them up. And I'm helping my nephew clean out his basement one morning. And he had a lot of money. His father was very wealthy, and he had all the systems I wanted and never had. And he's thrown away a Master System. He's thrown away PC Junior. He's thrown away, I forget what else. But I'm like, hey, if you're going to throw those out, can I have them? I'd like to have them. And he's like, sure. And so I'm trying to find, I go to Toys R Us. No one carries these games anymore because they're defunct, right? So I started buying them for $1 here. And next thing you know, I got too many games.
Because you got good deal on those games.
Yes, before things went stupid. There's no way I can afford to be a collector in the modern age. Thank God for emulation.
Yep, that's true. And then and it was right around that time, around 93, that you started looking for programmers, and we've got an ad to show that you sent us, Phil.
Oh yeah, let me share that screen. I'm sorry, I'm trying to take care of the chat too.
Well,
there you
for
go.
The youngins in the audience, you know, before the internet, other collectors were hard to find. You know, we had to use postal mail. And there's a guy named Frank Pulaski, and he's gone now. I talked to his wife about 5 years ago. and he's been gone about twice that time. Excuse me. But he would make these video magic issues. He'd sell games. He'd write a few articles, and he would, with a copying machine, photocopy the covers, cut them out, shrink them down, and sell them and trade. Sorry, I've got something in my throat.
That's all right.
But when Video Magic came in the mail, you'd look through it to see exactly what he had that you needed, circle it or highlight it, and then write a check, stick it in the envelope, and mail it to him the very next day before other people beat you. You know, because you couldn't go on to eBay and online and find these things. And so I put an ad in Video Magic saying, hey, I'm looking to help someone make some new games. I've played all the Coleco games. I still love them. I want to play something new on these systems. And yeah, that was like 93.
Do you have the other slide, Phil?
Yeah, I have to remove it and then add it. This is
okay.
Yeah, give me just a moment. I got to remove this. Then I have to add it.
Well, while he's doing that real quick, there was a question in the chat for Michael from Ballistic Coffee Boy asking about your classes. He was wondering a while back if they were offered online. Is people able to enroll in them online or anything?
I'm a hands-on person. It's a very interactive class, so they're not. The only time I did online was during COVID because I had to.
Right.
So. But yeah, if you zoom in, I don't know if you can zoom, but you can see the square of the ad.
I cannot.
It's got my old address in Kentucky.
Well, maybe I can. I lied. Hold on a minute.
But I mentioned Vectrex, all the Ataris, 2600, 1500, 7800.
Where am I? Oh, right there. Right there.
There you go.
So, and that was before any of the homebrews came out. So I was ahead of my time, and I did get some letters in response to it, but nobody with any skills. They're like, oh, I saw your ad. It's really exciting. I can't wait till you get some stuff out. I can't help you, but I'm interested if you pull it off. Right? So it kind of sat dormant for a few more years until I got online. And I couldn't afford a home computer, so I actually got online with a Sega Netlink, which is how I started up Good Deal Games initially.
Wow. See, even Good Deal Games even starts with a Sega product.
Yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
So another question for you, because we got to get this one in because, there's a little running joke with this stuff. So, with you being obviously big on all these game consoles and everything, what's your opinions on modifying them for the modern age and, having possibly drill holes in them and stuff to do like composite mods?
I mean, I'm all about preservation, and I know if people own it, they have the right to do whatever they want to it. Right. Yeah. And when I first started homebrewing games, before we got more sophisticated, we had to destroy a cartridge to make a new cartridge.
Right.
That killed me. It killed me. But it was the only way to do it. And at the time, those copies were common. But now they're not so common. But, there's been a lot of enterprising people that have made molds over the years. And we don't have to cannibalize that stuff. But that's more of the games. You're talking about the physical machines, right?
Yeah. The consoles. How do you feel when a person takes a ColecoVision and drills 3 holes in the back for composite mod?
Well, it hurts a little, but I guess you get a better picture out of it. I mean,
that's a really you pick a side. We're at war.
He's trying to get some stronger allegiance from you.
I knew the problem was a problem with software because, when a person has one machine, they're only modifying one machine. But if they're buying homebrew after homebrew after homebrew, and they're all cartridges that are being destroyed, there'll be 100 cartridges that are destroyed before one console is destroyed. So I'm thinking that because that's what I've had.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm sure there's like tens of thousands of combat cartridges that have just been mutilated.
And I've seen people make shelves and lamps out of them and couches and furniture out of cartridges. There's better uses.
Let me give my take on modding My ColecoVision and my 7800 are AV modded. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, he did it. Anyway,
You paid him to do it,
yeah.
so you can't just be like it
His
was
kid-
him.
It's
You
his
are
kids.
complicit.
His kids have to go through college, right? So anyway, I play. I have all of my consoles that were intended to play on a CRT. I do not play them on a modern flat screen TV
You're
at
playing
all.
them on a CRT anyway. Use your RF.
It doesn't look the same. It does not look as good. I'm sorry. When I originally had it, those consoles, they just did not look as good. And when Brian modded them, man, they are so crisp and look so great. I'm like, yes. And I know they're not going to end up in a museum. They're not, and they're getting much more use and enjoyment the way they are. So
I don't know. They might end up being in a museum, Phil, because those are very limited editions. I don't do that too often for people.
I didn't see your signature on there anywhere.
But yeah, no, I had to ask it, Michael, just because there's just a running joke because the other Mike just does not like holes drilled. He likes to preserve the consoles in their original state, and I
can put an end to this argument.
Uh-oh.
All right.
People I've worked with over the years was Ralph Baer, the father of the home video game.
Right.
And he used to send me the brown box to take to shows, to display, to use at the universities. And we mailed it in this cardboard box to the Postal Service, uninsured, for probably 12 years. And then finally a museum in Japan was going to put it on display. And before they could do that, the insurance company required it be assessed a value. It was assessed at $3 million. And at that point, we stopped mailing it through the Postal Service, and it ended up at the oh my gosh, what's the big museum?
The Smithsonian?
Smithsonian. It ended up at the Smithsonian. But when that happened, I still needed to display stuff. So he originally made some replicas for his 3 kids. Then he made one for Leonard Herman, and then he made one for me. And before he passed away, he probably made another dozen or so for a couple other museums. But when he made our replicas, he would alter the original design to make it more functional. For instance, the original brown box used batteries. Mine is modified so it can be plugged into the wall using a regular power source. Originally, it would go in through the RF signal, I guess. Mine modified for AV. Well, I guess just video because it has no audio, right? But, so if the father of the home video game is comfortable modding.
Okay, I know where Michael's going here. He's frozen. He's like, if the father of modern home video games is comfortable modding something, but he didn't mod it. He created a new version that has AV and a plug. And I am the second person to work on that because we had to replace a potentiometer, and I did that for Michael. But that, I think God struck him down because he was about to say it was okay.
Oh, we're back.
Yeah, there we go.
We're back. See, now
I lost you for I was in panic mode.
I think you put words in your mouth, Michael.
Yeah, well, I didn't hear them.
I just said that Ralph did not mod anything. He created a new version that had AV out and a plug. So the freezing was God striking you down for suggesting that Ralph Baer was okay with modding something.
Well, let me tell you something. I have a video of Ralph doing repair work on the original brown box for the Smithsonian. And you know what his repair job was? I wish I had this video queued up. Smacking the box with his hand and banging on it.
Yeah, I was much more gentle when I fixed that potentiometer for you.
Yes. Bergeron saved my classes, because at one point we, you know, a lot of these, I mean, even these replica boxes, he didn't make that many. Ralph sold them for like $10K, and he released the blueprints where people could make their own, but the parts aren't available. You have to get the parts machine made. Like, it costs you over $4K just to make one. And most of them are locked up behind glass. People can't touch them. And well, more than half of them don't have any insides and don't work anyway. If you go to most of the museums, you're seeing it in a box. There's nothing inside. They're empty. There's only about 8 of them, I think, that are actually functional. And those of it that have the functionals, Leonard Herman and I are really the only ones that are letting people play them. And even for a while, Leonard stopped sharing his, but he's brought his back out recently. So things happen, and thanks to smart people like Michael there, we can keep it going. Because, you know, when Lenny had an accident with his, Ralph was still around and fixed it for him, but Ralph's not around anymore. So thank God for you.
Well, it was a pretty simple fix, but I did get to play the brown box.
Yes, you did.
So Trollbot wants to know if you make homebrew Genesis games. I think you sell them, right?
I sell them. We've published.
There's a review of one on my channel.
We did Mega Quadro Pong was our first. And then we did the 3 war games. I can't even think.
Cannon Chaos.
Yes. Cannon Fire Chaos. I can't remember the name of my old games. It's horrible.
And so, you've published Magic Girl, is it? I have Magic Girl.
I didn't publish it. That was done not by Pico. That was done by, well, their name's escaping me, but they've since kind of gotten out of the homebrew game making scene. I bought their remaining inventory. Okay,
so you distribute. He definitely distributes a lot of Genesis games. But
well, here was the idea of Good Deal Games initially. I mean, initially I was reselling retail games, and I did that when no one else was doing it for a decade. And then next thing you know, video games, retro gaming becomes common. Everybody and their brother's doing it. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I'm not going to be able to compete. And at that time, one of my parents was really sick, and I had to basically shut down for a couple of years to take care of him. I had to leave state, go down to Florida, and come back for a couple months. And when I did, while I was there, I was kind of thinking, because I used to, one of my first jobs in the game industry, was how I got involved with the Consumer Electronics Show, which was the precursor to the E3s, is I wanted access to see these new games coming out. And so I talked the video rental store into letting me be an analyst for them. And they got me passes, and I was the youngest person in the room. The only person young that was there was Tommy Tallarico, which him and I became buddies because we're the only 2 young kids in the room. Of course, we all know what's going on with that, so I'm not going to go down that lane. But, you know, when I was at these shows, I'd get these demo copies of games, and then the games would get canceled or a generation would change and they never come out. And I'm sitting on these unreleased titles, and I'm thinking, you know what? If I sold something no one else has, then then I got a business model. I mean, I'm not really a business. I don't pay myself. All the money comes in and funds the site and pays for the next project. And that's how we can release what a lot of people would consider money losing projects, because a lot of our projects lose money, but they're cool and we like to do them, so we do it. But, you know, I contacted Stargate Films. I had 2 Sega CD games that weren't released, and Stargate Films, now they do stuff, well, before Walking Dead ended, but they do a lot of shows for HBO and AMC and stuff. They're still around. But I licensed 3 games from them, actually. Only 2 got released. One of them's still missing. When they sent me my copy, it turned out to be a PC game. And for a while, we were trying to convert it to Sega CD format, and our dev kit broke, so I put an end to that. But I'm still hoping the original is found somewhere and we can still release it. It's called Wingnuts. If anybody out there has access to Wingnuts for the Sega CD, I have the license for it. I want to release it.
Okay.
But we, you know, I did that. You know, I always wanted to be in the game industry. I got 3 degrees. I got a master's in computer animation back when it was only 3 colleges in the country in Canada had Silicon Graphics computers, and I was at one of them, and there are only 14 SGIs east of the Mississippi when I started animating. So at the time I was hot shit, but I really wanted to be in the game industry. But the only job offers I got were, well, I got a job offer with Atari, or with Squaresoft, and I turned it down to work for Atari, and they folded while I was in transit. That's a whole nother story for another day. But I never could quite get into the industry. Jellicoe offered me a job doing sports titles. I'm not a sports guy, batter up people, sports sciences, but I never quite got in. So I kind of made my own avenue into the industry, I guess. And I did it with these homebrews. But I originally designed the organization behind Trip Hawkins' idea. Remember, Trip Hawkins, when he started Electronic Arts, he was seeing these kids that were making these good quality games, and they were put them in Ziploc bags with black and white photocopied instructions, selling them as shareware at the local computer stores, and they'd be distributed from one store to another from kids on bicycles. And he saw these high quality products they were making, and he contacted them and said, hey, I want to buy these out. And that's how Electronic Arts got started, right? And I kind of want to do the same thing with Homebrew. I saw these people making these great games. A lot of them were in Europe. They didn't have the financing or the money to manufacture them or distribute them. People in the US wanted them, but it cost too much money to import them from overseas. So I'm thinking, well, if I buy them in bulk, 20, 40, 60 copies at a time, it brings the unit shipping down. And I became a hub for Homebrew, not just selling my own, but as a distributor, right? That was the original intent of it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I can't quantify it, but I've probably sold more Homebrew games than anybody, except maybe Atari H. I've never seen their numbers, but been doing it since the 90s.
Well, their numbers had a really big boost last year. He's still trying to keep up with those. I still haven't gotten my package.
What is Atari?
You and me both.
That's what I want to know. I keep waiting for that check in the mail, but it never shows up.
Well, speaking of that, I think that's a good lead into the question we talked about before going live. Is just with the whole change of Atari Age, there was a number of developers who now no longer have an avenue to get their games published, and with Homebrew Heaven and stuff, is that a possible avenue for some of these developers to maybe look at another place to get their games reprinted, because there's still a demand for a number of them to have a physical version. So
that's the whole point of this. I'd certainly welcome them. And we've spoken to a few, and there's 4 projects that are in the works, but I will warn you, I'm a smaller operation. I'm not as fast as Albert. I'm not as,
oh Lord!
Whoa.
Oh, you'll never get them.
That is not true. I have been waiting almost a year. For my Atari Age order.
Here's the thing: when I put stuff up online to sell, it's in hand, ready to go. I don't take pre-orders. I don't announce things in advance. I just drop it, and it's out there, and it's ready to go. So I don't wait for orders. I don't build up funds. I don't, build on demand. I have the stuff ready to go, and I ship out the same day the money comes in or the following day. I mean, unless I'm out of town for the weekend or something. I mean, everybody will tell you I'm quick, and I overpackage.
He does.
That's a good thing.
Just to respond to Trollbot in the comments, there's plenty of Super Nintendo homebrews. My very first homebrew game was a Super Nintendo homebrew. I don't know what you're talking about.
Do a Google search, you'll find them.
Yeah,
you have to emulate, obviously, but.
So, talking about homebrews, why don't we do a little talk about a game that Good Deal Games has just launched, and that is Flight of the Amazon Queen for the Sega Dreamcast. First time this game's been on a console. Do you want to tell us a bit about this, Michael?
Well, sure. The game's 3 decades old, originally released on PC, and it was a point-and-click game similar to what LucasArts and Sierra Online was putting out. And same high quality. One thing that's unique about that game at the time was most of the games at the time were text. And that game, sorry, my cat is pushing up against my laptop. She's never done that in the history that I've had her, but she's doing it now. So, so that game has text as you play it, but they actually hired, for the first time, they hired real actors, voice actors, and, you know, it talks at the same time, which was revolutionary at the time. But it's a lot of fun. It's a lot like Indiana Jones. As a matter of fact, the original design actually had Nazis, but the publisher shied away from that, and the story was changed, and now it even has dinosaurs. But yeah, we're happy to bring it to the console. I actually licensed the game over 4 years ago, along with another Dreamcast game, and they've been in development hell and a debacle. And before, how I mentioned, release a lot of projects that other people won't touch. Well, this one's definitely going to be a money loser with what we have into it. But now we're just trying to recoup some of the money. But like I said, we do this because we like to do it. The Dreamcast is one of my favorite systems, and it's neat. And also available for it is the soundtrack, which has never been in physical form before. So that's new.
And does it feature Mike's voice?
No, it does not feature. It's got the original voices. Phil, I don't know if you understand that this is a group chat, so thank you.
Hey, I'm trying to multitask here, and you know I can't do that from my gameplay. You know that. So
we're all happy you're here.
But so for people who may be interested in Flight of the Amazon Queen, that's going to be my review this week on Thursday. And if they want to purchase, they can purchase from Good Deal Games. And how much does this run?
$25 or $30. I can't even remember.
I believe you said. I believe you told me 30. Yeah.
And $5 goes back to Passfield. He's the game designer and the programmer. He's in Australia, and the soundtrack is $10. And I don't know what else to say.
So for the price of an Atari Homebrew, you can get a Dreamcast Homebrew with the soundtrack shipped for the base price of an Atari Homebrew game. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and it's nice to have a. Go ahead.
And it's a professionally printed disc, nice thick manual with an exclusive interview in there.
Oh yeah, that interview added a whole lot of pages to that booklet and put us way over budget, but he hadn't been interviewed for a long time, and I thought it was historically important, so we made it part of the deal.
Yeah, and so I had never played this before. I could tell you it's, as a fan of a lot of the Lucasfilm games, point-and-click games from back in the day, Michael had told me, you know, this is one of the better ones that aren't Lucasfilm. And it feels like a Lucasfilm game. It's actually really well done. I like it a lot.
Yeah, the humor's very spot on.
It's cheesy in that good way, right? And it's got, like, there's this one point, not a big spoiler for anything, but you're in the Amazon's complex, and there's this swimming pool and all these women, and you go to talk to one who's sitting beside the pool just listening to music. He's like, oh, I don't want to bug her. But you talk to the one taking a shower, and you could talk to her. You know, I don't want to be rude. But
how times have changed.
Yes. Oh, there's a lot of humor that you wouldn't be able to get away with now, for sure. But it's a lot of fun.
Speaking of humor,
well, I gotta give respect. Oh,
go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say I gotta give respect that you at least you got it professionally, done, because you did more than what Limited Run can do with their CD-based games. So
well, I gotta tell you, another team, World of Games, helped me with this. I told you this was in development hell. I licensed this. They sent me the master disc, and what I got was garbage. Like, it was not professional at all, and I just couldn't release it that way. And I actually went through 4 teams trying to get this thing out. I'd pretty much given up hope, and I was working on another project with another group with CDI Games, and I mentioned how the Dreamcast game I was banging my head, and he said, well, let my team try to figure it out. And I'm like, sure, go ahead. And I didn't expect it, but they pulled it off. So, and thankfully we licensed 2 Dreamcast games, and Flight of the Amazon Queen's very well known and very popular, but the other title I think is going to be a better hit. I enjoy the game. The quality's not quite as high, but it was a game that was only released in Spanish in South America. So it'll basically be, and it didn't sell well originally back in the day, had poor distribution, small company made it. So when we get it out, it'll basically be a new game to just about anybody that picks it up. So especially if you don't speak Spanish, you've never encountered it. So
yeah,
we're working.
Those are my favorite kind of ports. The ports that just bring something to an audience that never knew it existed.
Well, and I'm about game preservation, right?
Yep.
I mean, I love these homebrews where these people are putting out these amazing ports of these old games, and they're redoing the games that weren't done the way they should have been done back in the day. But you know what? I know you don't like Pac-Man, but there's a lot of ways to play Pac-Man. And while
he doesn't like
merit,
he doesn't like 2600 Pac-Man.
Oh, okay. So
yeah, the original 2600 one gives him nightmares in his sleep.
Excuse me, I'll be back. I gotta take some medication.
While I understand the technical merit, you know, that game doesn't need to be saved again and again and again, right? It's already well preserved. So to find these rare titles that never got out of their domestic small market that are really good and get them out.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to say to the masses because I'm a homebrew publisher. I'm never going to get stuff out to the masses, but to get it into more hands of the people that would appreciate it is valuable. Yeah. Like when we released our first Game Boy Advance game, you know, the team that made it, they made this motorcycle game. It's the only game to get a higher review than Excite Bike, the Nintendo's Excite Bike. It was fantastic. It was made for the Game Boy Advance. The Game Boy Advance kind of died. It never made it out. They contacted me and said, listen, our team worked hard on this game and no one's seen it. We read you interview in a magazine. Can you make these? And I'm like, yeah, I can. And we did, you know, and we got it out. So those are the success stories. I love the games that are lost, the prototypes that were finished and not released. I mean, that's the preservation that gets me excited.
Yeah.
And so then now another question with that, with the whole idea of preservation, and I think Game Closet mentioned it a while back here on the Dreamcast, because, you know, a lot of folks are starting to move their Dreamcast to like GD EMUs, different solutions that replace the optical drive. And again, I know this could always be a touchy situation, but have you ever considered maybe making the ROMs available for purchase? Because maybe not everyone's able to get the physicals. And again, I know that's a touchy.
I get that question all the time.
Yep.
I'm an old school guy. You know, like I've written for, I don't know how many magazines I've put out of business writing columns for them, but but you know, I was writing for one about 8 years ago, and they wanted to go digital only, and I said, you know, I get the thrill of going to the mailbox and pulling the magazine out and seeing it. Same thing with the games. Like I get the thrill of putting the cartridge, holding the plastic in my hand, putting it. That's what brings back the childhood memories. And I don't have a problem with ROM distribution, but I don't choose to do it with mine. It's just like with the print magazine. That magazine, when they guess they did about 6 more print issues, and they said, okay, we're going digital, despite my answer. And I said, well, then I'm out. I don't want to write for you. And they did a couple issues that were digital, and I have a bit of a following, and they got some complaints, and I think they lost some numbers, and they came back and they said, how many print copies do we have to make to get you back on board? Right. And I said, I don't know. I just want to get 2 copies in my mailbox. I think they were making like,
so the answer is 2.
The issue, right? Just to keep me on board and happy. I'm a simple man. That's what I want. And there's a lot of people like me, but I have no problems with distributing ROMs. You know, I can only make so many. I can only sell so many. I mean, homebrews are expensive. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of people aren't doing it, because it's expensive. And if you make a few too many, you're out of business, you know, and, I'm not worried about people not buying a hard copy because they have a digital copy. right? Because if you know anything about the homebrew market, there's normally not enough copies to go around anyway, right? So
Yeah.
I get it. I understand it. And, you know, I had the largest game collection in the world for a while before I sold it. Let me tell you something. It was a whole lot easier to sell it because of emulation, right? If I knew when I was boxing that stuff off and sending it off that I'd never get to play them again, it would have been a whole lot tougher. So I see both sides. I get it.
No, and I do, and I fully respect that. I mean, because again, I think we're all in the camp. We would prefer physical, but there's also that just convenience of the digital, and just in the fact that some folks aren't able to get the hardware anymore to be able to play the physicals.
Let me put it a different way. I have a hard time charging somebody money for a digital file. I find that weird. I know it's becoming accepted, but I find it weird, and I just can't do it. And I'd really rather just give the ROM away than charge somebody for it. But that's me. And you know what?
Let me give you my email address.
And let me give you email address. Yeah. Well, you know, though, I mean, I respect that because, again, everyone has their different beliefs with that, and there's no right or wrong with it, in my opinion. And to your point on the magazine thing is that, you know, for the longest time, I've only been reading digital. But to your point, you know, Ryan, good guy, Old School Gamer magazine, you know, I got some copies of the one that I was in because I was in the issue 39, and those physical copies showed up last week. And it was really cool to be back on a thick magazine like that, flipping through and looking at it, you know, because I've gotten so accustomed to just reading stuff online, and even, you know, prior I've had the digital subscription to Old School Gamer, you know, so it was just really cool having that physical magazine. So I completely get where you're coming from.
And the stuff,
the
and the
print
stuff
magazine has more pages than the digital version. You get more. You get more material.
And the stuff that you notice when you've got the physical version, because the ad that we put in there, so Mike's Gaming Gala / Good Deal Games Homebrew Heaven ad, he noticed it in the physical and he posted it in our Discord. He's like, "Oh, that's so cool." There is definitely something neat. Like for reading, I don't read off the screen. I mean, Google for research and emails for work and stuff. But if I'm going to be reading a book or magazine articles or something, for me, physical is the way to go. And you know, that's certainly dying out. It's becoming less and less, but I know that, like you said, there's a lot of people like us who there's a tactile feeling to it.
And the smell, just the printed smell of the magazine, you know.
I've got a lot of books. I've got a lot of books that are over 100 years old, and that is a thing. You open it and you smell like the cigar smoke and of pre.
But even new, like when I was actively collecting comic books as a kid, man, you know, going into the comic book stores, like, it's like, wow.
It smells like dead trees in here.
Yeah, I would
definitely the ink. You know, I was getting high off the ink.
Yep. Well, and I'll say Game Closet, like, again, Old School Gamer magazine, just, you know, plug out there because I know Michael writes for them. And like I said, first time getting an actual print issue, I was very impressed with it. I mean, just how thick they are. I mean, like you said, with the one, like 14 pages, which was probably mostly ads for $6. That's not the case with Old School Gamer magazine. I mean, that thing's at least a good, like, what, 80 pages, I think. So
this
probably more.
Yeah, this isn't an actual one. This was a free one that they gave out at Portland last year.
But yeah, I mean, I would say it was
quality.
Like, it was like that thick. It was like the glue binding. It wasn't a staple binding. I mean, I think it's definitely worth it if you're into wanting that physical print magazine.
And it's the last man standing.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, other than Retro Gamer out of the UK, which is excellent, it's it. So,
speaking of the printed word, you published Downright Bizarre Games, and hey, for fans of Mike's Gaming Gala, I'm actually one of the 1.5 million thanks that he's put in here. Michael has also been working on another book. Michael, why don't you tell us about that?
Well, before I go forward with that's my first and only book that I've published myself. I've actually been doing college textbooks for decades. I've done some projects with Rolenta Press and Leonard Herman. You know, I worked on Ralph Baer's book and Bill Kunkel's book.
I opened up. It's a PG show, and I just magically opened up to the Playboy page without even thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, I just actually posted some comments by Poe without reading them. So when you play this back,
it's not PG anymore.
It's not PG anymore.
It was blurry. So anyway, I've done a lot of college textbooks, but they're dry, boring reads. They're like black and white. Sometimes they even have photographs, and I don't know. You know, I don't know who buys them. Like, I think only the libraries are buying them, and they stick them on a shelf. And of course, kids don't go to the libraries anymore, so I don't know if anybody even reads them. Right. But yeah, I've got a dozen and a half or more books out over a couple decades. But that was the Downright Bizarre Games was the book I wanted to do for me. I wanted full control. So I self-published it. I laid every page out like a book cover because I used to be an animator and a designer years ago. But if you notice about the games in Downright Bizarre Games, they're all console games because the idea was to make a sequel that then had PC games, arcade games, and other types of games in it. But when I started working on it, I realized that one topic kept coming up more and more again. And if you read the reviews on Amazon, it's got a perfect 5-star review from everybody that's reviewed it, except for one lady who bought it for her kid and ignored the racy material notice in big, huge letters, and gave me 1 star because of that. I would have given her money back if she would have contacted me. But everybody likes this part in the center, which is called Unfortunate Headlines, Marketing Fiascos, Publicity Stunts Gone Awry, and Strange Advertising. And it leads to what people really seem to be interested in. And what comes up in my college classes a lot is controversy. So the new book, I'm announcing it here for the first time. Nobody knows. But I've been working on it.
Let's do a close-up.
I've been working on it for about 7 years, but seriously for a little over 3, about 4 hours a day for 3 years. The book is all completely written now. The editing's almost done, and the layout on the first 150 pages is done. But here it is. Controversy, downright despicable games. Video games that triggered rants, rage, dissent, and a whole lot of hullabaloo.
I like that. You know, it's interesting that you should bring that up because I was watching some YouTube videos on that subject some time ago where Congress, you know, like fighting games and things like that, where they would,
like night
they actually had hearings about this, where they, you know, talked about how it influenced kids to violence and all this other stuff. When in fact, you know, like school shootings and all this other stuff, where that actually has never been proven.
Look, this is the most in-depth book on this material ever made. I've spent hundreds of hours doing research, deep diving research. I have documents, and let me tell you something. I love gaming. It's been my life, right? I consider myself a champion of gaming. So here I am writing a book on the worst things in the industry, right? It's tough. It's hard for me to do because a lot of it's really, really awful. I mean, it's racist, it's sexist, it's political. I mean, it's violent. There's some horrible, I'm going to put on the cover, this is a horrible book. Not because of the content's horrible or the writing's horrible, but because of the content in it. But as a historian, I can't just promote the game industry and the goodness of it and turn my back and ignore the bad stuff. So I have this inner struggle with this book. But no book like this has ever been written and told. There's the occasional article here and there, but nothing with the amount of research that I've got into this. And it's a beautiful coffee table book to go with it.
And just to give Operation Shut Down the Hat Trick, will Bubsy be in it?
Bubsy is not in it.
Well, can you explain why you mentioned Bubsy to Michael?
Bubsy is the unofficial mascot of our podcast because in our very first podcast, we were making fun of Atari potentially wanting to make Bubsy their mascot.
So we made him our mascot.
And so Operation Shutdown has a drinking game where whenever we mention Pac-Man for the 2600, whenever we mention drilling holes into consoles, or whenever we mention Bubsy, he takes a shot. So I've just given him the hat trick of shots.
Understood. I was, when you said that, I'm trying to think, what was the controversy of Bubsy other than it wasn't very good? But
so the other thing I'll mention about Michael's books is because he is formerly a graphics designer, he puts a lot of effort into the layout. It's not just here's a picture of a game and here's text. Oh my God! Oh no, that's Conquer. That's not Bubsy. I'm sorry. But yeah, they're beautiful.
The pages are very well done, Michael. I have a background in graphic design myself. Very well done.
Well, thank you. And I got to tell you, because I'm old school and I'm too cheap to pay Photoshop by the month with their subscription.
He cuts them out and sticks them with glue.
Yeah, it's a Video Magic production. No, I did it the hard, stupid way with CS6 version of Photoshop. It's like 18 years old.
I use CS5 for all my thumbnails.
Software. So I did every page in Photoshop, exported as a JPEG, and then imported the JPEG as a single page into a Microsoft Word document on a 22-year-old version of Word, and then exported that out as a PDF. I had to manually do all the page numbers myself. I mean, it was brutally stupid, but it's all old school.
Let me explain.
I can say with confidence, having known Michael for over a decade now, or almost a decade, that process defines him perfectly. That is the type of guy that Michael Thomasson is.
Well, when my kids were in, my kids were in college in 2009, and so when they were in college, I had them buy the Adobe Creative Suite for the college price, which was like $100, $150. I can't remember what it was, which is cheap. You know how expensive that can be to pay retail. And so I bought this thing, and I'm still using it. That's what I use for the channel still. So I've been using it for all this time.
Well, for this new book, on the latest Windows update, my CS6 version of Photoshop would work fine for graphics. But whenever I put in text, as soon as I added a symbol like a comma or a period or a quote, it would jumble all the letters. So I still wouldn't. I looked into Photoshop. Even with my teacher discount, I decided I couldn't pull the trigger. So I ended up buying something called Affinity. And I've been using Photoshop since 1.0. So it's a hard curve, but now I have like real layout software through Affinity, and I've been happy with it. And speaking of using Photoshop since 1.0, I used to be a programmer before I was an animator. And a lot of people don't know this, but my godfather's son, his name was Bob Height. He had a Commodore PET, which was the first home computer that you could buy. And he was like my hero. He drove a Corvette. He worked for the television station. He was the one that broadcast Star Trek and all the sci-fi shows that he introduced me to. And he taught me Morse code and ham radio. And when he brought that Commodore PET, I lived in his basement, and he taught me to program. I was programming before I could hold a pencil and write on my Big Chief paper, which of course they don't use anymore. But those early programming languages, if, and, or, go to, but, all 2 and 3 letter words, I could type it before I could write it. So, kudos to him for getting me in this world.
Nice.
So one other question I got for you, because I know we're starting to get out of time, is just, obviously I know ColecoVision, I can tell from, you're wearing the shirt and everything's, probably one of your more favorite systems, especially with your history behind it.
My first love.
And I know we've talked about the ColecoVision last week, which was a really good episode. But so I got to ask while you're here, what was some of your favorite ColecoVision games for it?
A lot of people don't like the game so much, but I like Tarzan. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I like the character. But of course, I had a lot of great arcade ports. But I don't know. I like them all 144 of them. And the homebrew scene has twice as many as
the homebrew.
Yeah.
I mean,
so,
and 75% of those are MSX ports.
SG1, SG1000, all those, I mean, I think Coleco. I mean, I could be wrong on this, but I think ColecoVision is probably the biggest homebrew community out of everything, right now. I could be wrong on that.
I love the Atari, but I don't know how Albert does it because I have a hard time selling them. The ColecoVision and Intellivision is where most of the action is, but yeah, the Oil Smell was another game I really liked on the ColecoVision.
That might also be because the Atari 2600 homebrew community has been around for so long that, like, with the exception of maybe Champ Games, what can be done has been done. And I think, especially with Intellivision, like personally, just knowing the Intellivision homebrew community more, but also seeing some of the things that are done for ColecoVision, it's like there are more surprises in those systems, I think, than there are in the 2600 that I've seen anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I hate to say it, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but the farther generation you go back, the more of us that are gone.
Oh yeah.
And my eyesight's going, my finger dexterity is going.
Your voice was going for half of this podcast.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on with that. Sorry about that.
That's all right. But no, and it is true. And that's like when we were talking about Atari during our Atari thing, we were talking about, yes, okay, double down on the retro. That works for now. But I believe I made the comment even there. It's like 20 years from now, that audience doesn't exist.
Well,
so you gotta,
It's one thing that's really neat about our hobby. You look at a bunch of these other hobbies and other parts of technology. The creators of film are all gone. The creators of print or printers of this, they're all gone. And we've lost a lot of game creators too, but some of the originals are still around, and it's important we pick their brains. And that's why I wanted that interview in the booklet of the new game. And, it's exciting. Like, I would have never thought in a million years as a kid that I was going to grow up and work on projects beside my heroes, like I don't pay myself, but that is the biggest payment I could ever get, and the thrill, I did 3 projects with Casey Munchkin, I used to love that game. I played that game, and I made one, or more than one. So, it's neat to do that. And most of those guys, they're happy to talk and tell their stories. So you should get them on these podcasts, not me.
Well, I was actually, we've talked about this, and I want to talk with you if maybe you can convince Ed to come on our podcast.
He's a pretty private guy, but you got me here and I'm a pretty private guy. So I will talk to Ed.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that.
No, and that is one thing I'm looking forward to with Korgs here in a couple of weeks, because I know they announced that they brought Dan and Gary Kitchen back, and then David Crane's going to be there. So that's exciting to see that. So,
Yep, good guys.
Yeah, when I go up there, hey, hey, bro, would you like to be on our podcast? Why not? All I can do is say no. All they can do is say no, right?
Just have Michael with you whenever you go.
Yeah. I'll have someone watch your table while.
Let's get Todd Fry on the podcast.
Oh.
He's out of here. You have to understand that I about kick him off about once every show. I remove him about once every show. So anyway, all right, I'll put him back where he belongs and put you back.
Gosh, I feel like I'm on the Brady Bunch here. We're moving the
No. Hey, listen, you know what, Michael? This has been a great show, and I've learned a lot. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you in a couple weeks. It's going to be fun, and I'll check out what you got and maybe get a few things and whatnot. But
is there anything that we forgot to plug for you? Got your book, got your upcoming book, and we got the Amazon Queen. Is there anything else you'd like to plug while you're here?
Mike's Gaming Gala. Be there, be square.
How much did you pay him, Mike?
I pay him in my friendship.
Hey,
sounds to me like you're in the negative.
The world together. We went to Easter Island.
We went to the middle of the Pacific Ocean together and had a romantic dinner on the beach
during the sunset.
That's right.
With a dog standing on me. A wild dog standing on me.
And he was spooked because he had already been bitten by a wild dog.
Oh,
yeah, let's not go there. I need no more shots.
You'd think it was a pack of wolves that attacked him. I heard this little yelp behind me, and I turned around not knowing what it was. He's like, Michael, I went with you because you were going to protect me. And I was laughing at him.
I wanted to bring someone that was in decent shape, that was younger than me, because sometimes traveling in South America alone's not a good idea. And it was a cool thing. We're both into history. And he stayed beside me the whole time. And then we're right near the airport. The only time he leaves me in like 3 days of traveling, he's going up ahead of me. And we're right in the middle of downtown city. There's
busy street.
200 people around me. And out of the blue, I'm just attacked from behind by these dogs. I'm like, I don't know what hit me. You didn't hear me yelp. You were too far up. You weren't where you're supposed to.
I heard a yelp, and I turned around. I had no idea it was you. It didn't sound like you. It was an otherworldly yelp.
Yeah, well,
yelp.
You yelp a lot. If you were surprised by a bunch of wild dogs, you'd yelp too.
There was one small dog, Michael. There was not a pack of wild dogs. But you had one little nibble on your heel.
Well, I have photos. I have bloody leg photos.
You guys are the ones that sound like the old married couple.
That's all right.
That's funny because my daughter refers to Michael as my boyfriend. So
yeah, I don't doubt that at all. I don't doubt that at all.
I am happily married. Thank you very much.
Yes, and Operation Shutdown. I also have photos. I have a photo of him cowering from that dog on the beach.
Oh,
he's sitting like, and the dog is just sitting.
Dinner. We are way off topic.
You had the fish. I had the steak.
Okay, wanted my fish dinner.
Anyhow.
It's been a decade, but anyway.
Anyhow, we got way off topic. Thank you so much. I consider it a personal favor that you came on, and obviously, you know, you're welcome to come on whenever you want. I know you probably won't, but you are always.
I turn most of these down.
Which is why I consider it a personal favor. And it was an absolute blast getting at least some of that story of the guy behind Good Deal Games out there. So I appreciate it.
And it was an honor for me as well. Thank you so much. There's a link in the description for Good Deal Games and a link to your YouTube channel as well. Appreciate you being on the show. Thank you so much.
I do want to say that when you support Good Deal Games, the money goes back into the hobby. We're all volunteer. No one's been paid. So when you support us, you support your hobby.
You heard it here first. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. We'll see you at Korg's. All right.
Yeah, look forward to it in a couple weeks.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week on Retro Bliss Rewind. Take care. Bye-bye.